Okay, so now we move on to Nate Stevens from Democracy Collaborative. Democracy Collaborative in the US actually coined the term community wealth building. I do also want to acknowledge some of you on the call may know Jason Twill, who's been part of the lab and involved in design and architecture. And he introduced us to Democracy Collaborative and Nate. And then Nate and I have been able to build, both of us really believe in building the relationship. So we've had lots of individual calls, which I think is once again really important for the work, that you get to know each other, get to build on strengths and work together. So so I'd actually like Nate now to introduce yourself and the Democracy Collaborative and discuss community wealth building and the relationship piece. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Tarania. It is such a privilege to be here with all of you today. And I'm going to pull up some slides here just to have a visual reference. And while I do, I just want to say how thrilling and refreshing and encouraging it is to be hearing all of you talking about this as a project of decolonialization from the start. I think that's already giving you a great head start on several other cities who are approaching something similar. When we talk about decolonization, I talk a lot in this work about a big part of it being unlearning what we think an economy is, what we think the economy is for. So really quickly, and I know we have Tarania has an amazing lineup of folks speaking today. But the boilerplate definition of community wealth building is right here. I'm sure Tarania can share slides after the fact. But I think it's really helpful to break down each of the words. I think the Democracy Collaborative was quite intentional with this term, which really, I also just want to be very transparent. I think community wealth building is a concept and a model that in many ways is a modern intellectualization of what many cultures have been doing throughout history, and many non-Western cultures have how many communities have been living and thriving throughout time. So community, starting there. For me, this really means centering racial equity in economic development and economic policy. And also community voice. I saw in the chat somewhere that someone emphasized the importance of community power in all of this, which we really can't forget is essential. Wealth is crucial and really I think underpins TDC's theory of change, that ownership of assets and I would say process, so management of assets matters. So who benefits from the anchor institutions in the community, who benefits from the city's procurement and hiring and investment, all of those kinds of questions. Ownership is essential. And I like breaking it down this way because I think the last word is also really important and gets left out a lot. And it's the word that's I think is really important to remember. And that's that we're building something new. And it's really been exciting since I met Tarania to hear about the explicitly experimental approach of the Commons Lab and really acknowledging and being aware of the fact that we're building new systems, new relationships, new processes, and new capacities. And we don't exactly know where this is headed. So we need to experiment our way there. So that's what community wealth building means. It's also, it can be useful, I think, to have a mental map of this systems view of what is the local economic system that is building community wealth. And some of you might be familiar with Preston, a fairly small sized city in England that has really taken up community wealth building as the municipal economic development model. And you can see in this simple graphic how their local institutions are connected. And you can see a lot of these are resource flows of actual assets and resources, cash going between the local government the local government and worker cooperatives, the hospital and worker cooperatives. But I think it's really helpful to remember that it isn't only financial capital that makes this work. We can think about many other kinds of capital that are just as important and that institutions and individuals can lend to this ecosystem building approach as well. Intellectual capital, cultural capital. There are a lot of things that we need to keep in mind beyond just the dollar amount. I include this image just because I think it's so important to remember that this is really what we're tackling. I think many of you are probably familiar with the parable of the blind man and the elephant. It was great to hear the introductions and hear what a diverse representation of the ecosystem is here. You're all experiencing the elephant of Sydney differently based on which part of the system you touch in your work and life. And so it's really important to have spaces like this to come together and build a shared understanding of what is this thing? Great. I just want to close, well, if we have 30 seconds, I can just briefly touch on this. What we're talking about here is systems change. Tarania said we're changing the world with this. We're not just hoping to support a few women-owned businesses or minority-owned businesses. This is really about fundamentally changing the way things work. And in doing that, we need to remember the kinds of questions we're asking. And in this work, if we're really looking to transform and not just to improve, we really need to be asking, how do I make sense of this? What is our core purpose? And I think the way this conversation has been unfolding and the connection to personhood and to the relational component bodes really well for this group. I think thinking deeply about whose perspective matters is crucial if this is going to work. And then the last thing I want to emphasize is just that this work requires building new capacities. We're imagining working differently in this next economic system. So as many of you represent larger institutions, we need to learn to collaborate with humility and to follow community. Action learning, we don't have it figured out, so we need to learn as we go. And really keeping an eye on the forest and the trees, not losing the big story and vision for the details and tactics that we need to get there. Otherwise, I'm, like I said, thrilled to be here with you all and really excited to follow along on the Sydney Commons Lab journey. Thanks for inviting me, Tarania.